And we'll call the meeting of the December 15th Fairhope Airport Authority meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes for the November 17th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to read them?
I'll make the motion. We approve the minutes for the November airport board meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Skip, you want to talk a little bit about airport operations?
Just in talking to Kyle, you got 4 patent bulbs out,
Yeah.
and he's got them on order, and I've already talked to Nick. He's going to put out a no tamper before we
Yeah.
replace that.
And we also had some damage from some of the runway lights got shorted out, so we've got those fixed, but we've got to work through that. As far as I still haven't gotten a bill from Mosley
Okay.
for that work, which is a lot of underground work and trying to trace down. It was a pretty big challenge to get everything back after the. I think that may even be an insurance claim item, so we'll see. Okay. Okay, update on construction of the 20 T hangars on the east side. Don, you want to take a run at that?
Yeah, sure. There's been a lot of conversation, as a lot of you all know, from another entity here in the area that was going to put up 40 hangars. And so we were going to transfer our deposits, of which we have 25 hard deposits, to this entity, but that entity is absolutely off the radar and cannot get in touch with them at all. So that's telling me a whole lot of things, and we ought to move forward with our 20, which we've approved.
We have approved. I have not. I was told this group I would try to get with some of the city council members on an individual basis and talk about them guaranteeing the debt and their support of the project. I've done that with two of the 5, and I just have not gotten in front of everybody yet to do that. I would appreciate anybody's help that was interested in getting in front of meeting with a couple of the city council members over the next couple of weeks and over coffee and kind of telling what our project is.
We know that $250,000 that is on the table from AlDOT that was withdrawn, would that be available in 2021 for this?
You'd submit a state application for it, but there's no guarantee of it. It depends on available funding they have.
But you're
At the end of, like at summertime.
But Chip, if we start the project, that money's off the table.
Okay.
Okay, but if we defer, if you're asking if we defer the project for a year, then we could reapply, and we'd have we'd take our chance.
I think it's such a demand for hangars, I think we shoot ourselves in the foot if we defer it. We need to move on.
We kind of owe it to the aviation, not kind of, we do owe it to the aviation community to give them a reasonable opportunity to have hangars. And we haven't built anything new at the airport in a long time for hangars, general aviation.
How many hard deposits?
25 for 20. And now a couple of those are going to be disappearing because of the Hansen Group. They put their deposits in on our project, and I'm confident that they're going to be withdrawing their deposits once of course, their hangars will be finished long before ours will be. So it'll be down to 21.
So if I'll get with y'all individually, if you could probably carve out some time in the next couple of weeks that we could meet with a couple of the council members and just make sure they're on board, make sure that they understand what we're trying to do, make sure they understand our message. And we could, I think that would be, the banks are on board. They just want to make sure the city's going to guarantee the debt. I mean, that helps a lot. Okay. I do want to. In your package is an approval, is a proposal to approve Volker's engineering fee proposal for the access taxiway and site development for the 2 T units. I would like to give me approval to, as we go forward, that we can sign that and move forward with an engagement with Volker to do what we've talked about doing. Both engineering and then construction management for the actual access roads.
I'm 100% for that, but do we need to do it before we have commitments from But we can approve it.
I was
subject to-
hopeful when I put this together, Vince, I'd have, you know what I'm saying, that I was hoping I'd get a couple of meetings, and so no, we don't need to do that
Is
until.
that gonna mess you up if we wait 30 days?
Now, I'm gonna say this, Hank,
I don't even think you could make it contingent upon, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Y'all's agreement with, or further research with the other entity, you know what I mean? And then, 'cause I think the way our contract said, we don't start till notice to proceed is actually issued from you. So even if you've executed the contract, we don't proceed
we'll
until
just,
we get a notice of.
we'll,
notice.
if that's okay, we'll wait.
Yeah, that's fine, that's 100% fine.
Okay.
But for the record, I've read it and I'm
Yeah.
100% for it, and we gotta have it to do what
I'm
we
gonna
wanna
say
do.
this, I
But
thought the
I'll-
construction management fee was a lot, considering how many days, I mean, using the access roads, it took, what, 4 days of engineering, or construction management time to build the access roads?
Well, you're talking about the one access road.
Yeah, well, okay, so,
Yeah, what they've got to do for the taxiways is there's still some drainage that's involved,
okay,
and a whole bunch of dirt that's got to be hauled in. Plus,
Okay.
more pavement too.
okay. Well, anyway, I'll, the last time we did an access road, the construction management fee was actually half. You know, I think we got a 50.
We can relook at it. I know I've
Okay.
gone over it like 3 times with Don, Chip, and Vince,
Okay.
so we can reevaluate it again.
No, it is what it is, I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, if there's a discount, I mean, if it comes in less, you won't bill us. I mean, if you do it
Yeah,
quick.
it's by the hour, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
okay.
cost plus service. It's
Understand.
not a lump sum service for the construction inspection.
Okay.
So it's basically billed by the hour, an hour of work, an hour of bill, it's not a lump sum.
Okay, next, item number 6 is, every year in March, we look at our insurance, both the aviation insurance, our property and casualty insurance, and our directors and officers insurance. This year, some of this may be a challenge. We've asked Garrett Turpak to come maybe tonight and kind of talk through some of our insurance issues, and maybe make some recommendations of some shortcomings we have now, and maybe we can prepare for doing some things differently in March. Garrett?
Good evening. Doesn't bite, does it? I was invited, as Joe stated, to give you a little background on some options for insurance for you folks. But before I get in the deep end there, a little bit about me. I've been a resident of Daphne since '94, and I've been a tenant in a T hangar at Fairhope since late 2010. Currently have a hangar there. And my background in aviation started back in '77 at NES Whiting Field, and I was one of the T-28s flying over here causing all the initial noise complaints. From there, I did a Coast Guard career, retired Coast Guard aviator, retired Delta captain, and currently at the airport on the AOPA, Aircraft Owners Pilots Association, Aviation Support or Aircraft, let me get it right, Airport Support Network represented, volunteer. I also do flight instruction in Baldwin County and local area. I'm also a member of the Civil Air Patrol in Mississippi, in the Mississippi wing, and I do some corporate flying out of Brooklyn. And I'm a co-owner in an aircraft at Fairhope and one out at Bell Forks. In 2005, after I left Delta, I started an insurance agency in downtown Silver Hill, and in 2017, I sold that business. But I maintained the aviation book of business. And my current client base includes an airport in Alabama, a flight school in Alabama, a flying club in Alabama, and numerous general aviation clients from Maine to Texas, Kansas, and Florida, and a few south of the border in South America. I was presented with the declaration pages and the policies that you currently have in effect. And I reviewed them a month or so ago and saw some things that would be of concern if I was in your shoes. And basically, you have to look at what your exposures are, what the risks to those exposures could be, and what's your tolerance to those risks. And based on that, then you go forward with an agent or a broker, and you get your policies. And what I can offer you folks is, if you decide that a change of agent, change of broker is in order before your March 14th renewal, at least 45 days prior to that, you should effect that. And if that's something you would like me to do, I could do it. Another option would be, if you don't want to go that route for a change of agent, change of broker, you could hire me as a consultant on a percentage basis of your total premium to be negotiated, and I could provide the input and suggestions and meet with you, address any concerns you have, and then go forward as well. What questions might you have at this time?
One question for me now, the consulting option, that would be, the premium would be net of commissions?
So what typically would happen is your agent is going to get a commission, and that's their end. They're paid by the insurance underwriters and company. But if you were to hire me as a consultant, just like you would anybody else, that would be between me, my corporation, and the airport authority. It would be free and clear of your existing agent.
How would we get, our existing agent probably has certain companies locked up as far as his ability to present that to us. How would we avoid, I know when I did it a couple of years ago, that was a frustration. Other agencies shared this with the best agent, the best rates are over here. We can't seem to get to those because your agent's got them locked up. How would we avoid that?
Yeah, the term is called a block.
Yeah, blocked.
And the agent of record, if you decide you want to go to a different agent, a different broker, in order to remove that block, you have to sign that letter, and then that goes out to the underwriters, and then the underwriters are obligated to deal with the agent of record.
So you have to change agents of records or just remove the agent of record?
It's one and the same. When you
Okay.
sign that form, whoever's the delegated individual or company on that form is now the agent of record. You also have the option, if you made no headway, you could always get another change of agent and go back to the original. But that, I mean, you're not locked in permanently, as say a 12-month period or whatever.
Back to my question, Garrett, the consulting concept, does that entail maintaining the current agent relationship and then you would consult over and above that?
Yes.
Okay, I see. Okay. That means almost we'd be double paying.
Well, that percentage wouldn't be the same.
Right.
And, 10% commission on a policy
Yeah.
To the agent would be separate from what a consultant would charge. So you're looking at right now about $44,000 a year in premium.
It would go up. Right?
And, well, let's just say based on what's in front of you, that percentage of that as a fee to consult, to work directly with the airport authority would be negotiated. But it would not be 10%.
Okay.
It'd be a fraction of that. But just to repeat myself, you really need to look at what your exposures are. You do have the property, you do have the liability, and you have the directors and officers exposure.
Talk through the liability, Josh. I mean, I've always in my own mind, as an authority, that enabling legislation for the authority indemnifies us for any any liability.
It provides, I don't say indemnity, I don't know why the word escaped me, but the airport authority as an entity cannot be liable for negligence. And there's actually also a recent Alabama Supreme Court opinion that held that, based on the statutory language, an airport authority cannot be liable for torts. Now, negligence is in the statute, so any negligence claim against the authority would fail based on that statute, which is a complete defense for the authority. That doesn't necessarily extend to the board members, which is why we have the directors and officers liability insurance, but we do have statutory protection from a negligence claim possibly also protection from a general tort claim, such as wantonness. That's, again, based on the Alabama Supreme Court decision. It's not statutory, but as of now, that's the latest pronouncement from the Alabama Supreme Court. So there is broad protection for the authority. It is not protection from, for example, contractual claims. That's something that would not fall within the purview of that protection. I'm trying to think of other examples, but contractual claims are probably a very good example. But having said that, the insurance is still valuable because the insurance company provides a legal defense. If the authority is sued, it takes a lawyer to raise the defenses that I've just described, and the insurance company provides the valuable protection of hiring lawyers to defend the authority in those circumstances.
Eric, one more question for me, I'm sorry. I thought I saw we have a $1 million general liability limit. I, even my own homeowner policy, I have a $1 million plus a $2 million umbrella. That seems, I don't want to give you a leading question, but maybe it is. Okay. We seem underinsured there. Do you agree with that?
To build off of what you said, the coverage is to settle a claim and to provide defense. And so if you look at what the exposure is and what that $1 million could cover and what the statute would cover, you have to see if there are any risks that would lead you to other exposure. And is the $1 million enough? You have $4 million plus $500,000 for D&O. What's the risk relative to what goes on at the airport to what takes place at the meeting? You have to compare that. And then the building coverage, although you took a fairly substantial hit due to the 5% wind hail, in the eyes of an insurance company, not my eyes, but an insurance company, that's chump change, $600,000. I can tell you, without mentioning an airport where a fatality was involved, not to the airport authority, but to an entity, and they had $100,000 worker comp, the reserve on that the insurance agencies have for all the lawsuits is $14.7 million. So they can stack up whatever they want and understand that the attorneys or the legal entities that deal in insurance cases and those companies, they're not going to kill the golden goose because insurance companies are going to pay. But you've got to have good coverage to meet somewhere in the middle. And that's what you need to look at. Take your statutory coverage, your $1 million coverage, and see if you have any gaps. In my opinion, you have an issue there. You've got less coverage for more exposure at that airport than you do here with the $4 million for you folks as individuals and
Now,
directors.
we also, Continental Motors, who is our FBO, their contract with us indemnifies us for any operational issues. If they were moving planes around or hangars blew up or whatever, they're responsible for it. We have no responsibility. Is that your understanding too, John?
As long as it occurs on the leased premises.
Yeah, on the leased premises. Now that's, yeah.
So how many acres do you have inside the fence?
We have.
And how can that fence be broached?
Yeah, it's only on they probably lease 35 acres from us or something like that. It'd be on that, where they're moving airplanes in and out and the actual hangars themselves, not at the actual runways and taxiways. So.
Well, let me throw a hypothetical.
Okay.
So somebody lands and one of our four-legged friends is on the runway.
Yep.
Who's going to eat that?
Or who's going to, if the lights are out and they can't see the.
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
that's not Continental.
No.
That's the airport authority. Any other thoughts? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll discuss this and we'll decide with the January meeting kind of what our plan of action is. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Chip, any? Okay. All right. Day of mentoring. Damon, you want to speak briefly about that? I thought that was an exceptional thing that we had at the airport.
So I want to just start by saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Will, I didn't come back to your email about the young Eagles or junior Eagles because I didn't see it till the night before. It was too late. So Saturday, December 5th, we had a mentoring regime at the airport. I'd like to thank the Airport Authority for giving me the opportunity to bring these kids on, and for what I've said to Joe, it was 40 freshmen through to seniors from Mobile County with 5 mentors. So I thank the Airport Authority, thank Continental Motors, especially Josh. So Josh stepped up for us, helping out with what was going to be on the ramp. Mr. John Trimble from the State Troopers was happy enough to let me have a helicopter to go through and show them how the operations of the helicopter was. I had Mr. Mark and
Mandy.
Miss Mandy from Coastal Academy for both here and also for Mobile to talk about the A&P direction and what would be available. And they actually brought one of their teachers in as well, which was really good, showing in the robotics section, the welding section. They went through all the workshops that would be there. And Josh did the same thing, showing Continental Avionics shop, putting things together. We discussed fueling, differences in fueling, what we think about. I was lucky enough, my wife came over from Airbus and she had a long conversation with all the boys about career paths with Airbus across the board from Mobile County. And also I was lucky enough that Spanish Fort donated me lunch so I could sort out and feed everybody from that end, which obviously all the young fellows were very happy with. So for the day, just to summarise, I had 40 plus 5, and the idea was to expose a group of students, freshmen through to seniors, who aren't sure of their career path, and that's cool. I had no problems with that, but to show them aviation, because as we always say, mostly aviations, they drive past an airport and have a look and they say it's a green field and that's fine. Many, if not the majority, but not all, have never flown in an aircraft whatsoever. So they have no experience. So we talked about the ranging roles, A&Ps, refuelling, groundwork being ramp off ramp, pilots in general, between the difference between a general pilot for GA, which we have many of, and the commercial idea, and we're lucky enough we had a couple of good looking citations that come in. Administration, how we run an airport, what that means in getting things done from A to B. We link that to businesses, so I've had not so much a discussion with Nick, but Mr. Randy, who runs AeroPro down in Gulf Shores, is happy to take on students whom would like to become A&Ps, and he's happy to pay for classes or their tuition for their fees for them to work. So Mandy and Mr. Mark are all talking to them. So there's a potential, because AeroPro are looking at expanding. We can do that also here at Fairhope. And also we went through that simulator, which was really good once we got that up and running, so they all got a bit of a scenario of that. So where are we going to? What's next? So I'm only going to link with Coastal and schools in Mobile County, and also with Baldwin County to do a very similar idea. I was going to reach out to Councilman Corey, I think is, but he's just new. He's newly in the role, so he's probably got enough on his plate at the moment. And also for those gentlemen, A&P business, what they're thinking, what they would do with expounding. I was looking at a 421 Cessna down at Gulf Shores that I was thinking about to try and give it to the A&P school, but that's no longer available, so I'm looking around because they've got a very old Cessna of some type in the A&P operation. I'm trying to give them another machine, and Mr. Mark's got his facility from there. So that's sort of it in summary. I didn't want to spend a lot of your time. I just appreciate everyone helping out and what we did. There's a lot of young people in Mobile and Baldwin County, because I didn't want to go too far out, that came back to me with comments about what they saw in the day, which was what did it for me. So if 1 out of 40 comes back and says they want to go down an aviation path, I'm more than happy. But they talked to me about the differences in ceramic versus standard aircraft skins, which I wouldn't think anyone would say anything. Another one talked specifically about radios and avionics from the Continental side. One guy actually had a long conversation with me about talking about what you'd fuel and what do you think about when you're talking about altitude, which I was astounded with. So things like that sort of come out, so I'm hoping that that will give them some emphasis going forward. That's all. questions? Sorry.
Is there a next step, or do you want to try to do this again, or, I know it's a
I don't
big
know.
task.
I don't know. I'm sort of mulling it over. I think so, but I'd look at Baldwin County side of thing, and I would include the Gulf Shores area as well at this stage. I don't want to just go too far out, but I think there was a bunch of groups that would come in. I wouldn't go more than 40. 40 was manageable,
Sure.
but I think it was a good outcome.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 8 is review of the review and acceptance of the Phase 1 environmental site assessment for the east side. If you remember, a couple months ago, we commissioned an environmental assessment for the east side Phase 1. Here it is. It's certainly thick enough. There were no findings. Basically, it's just basically, they regurgitated a lot of things that that Volker had already found as far as wetlands and whatever. So, I mean, it is what it is. We will make it available to any tenant or any developer on the east side going forward, and we'll just put this to bed. We did send it to the bank that the P10 group are using. That was part of what they needed to get their permits and get their loan approved. So it is done, and we've got it here, and we'll provide it as needed going forward. Questions? I'll pass it around. Anybody wants to look at it? Okay. Next is the hurricane review, kind of where we are. I think there's a spreadsheet in your package about kind of summarizes where we are. Kind of where we are is I guess there's 3 things that are outstanding. One, the public safety hangar. We've gotten the adjuster's approval to spend $202,000. All the engineering structural materials have been ordered, structural components have been ordered, and the engineering done. The long lead time is the bifold door, and it'll be in February. So I would think by February, the public safety hangar would be completed. They've been very patient with us, but it's quite an undertaking. The only contingency there is no one's been on the roof yet to see what the roof damage is, but our sense of it is there was not much structural damage. Well, we got to take back half of it anyway, but other than, past that half point, I mean, we think that things are in pretty good shape. Okay? Questions on that? Next thing is the tenant area or the fuel facility. We did get approval to re-put that back up for like $72,000, with a structural element. After doing some digging and maybe some prodding from other people, I think it's an alternative is to continue with the tenting situation like we have now. I've got a proposal from Gulf Coast Event Center for $24,000 to buy that existing tent for $24,000, and then they said basically they'll stand a 40 to 45 mile-an-hour wind, and they would take it down. If we had another hurricane, they'd take it down and put it up for $750, one time, every time we need to. So I think I've sent out emails kind of talking about that to everybody in the past. I kind of like to put that to bed tonight and move forward. What are your thoughts?
What was that wind speed, Joe?
35 to 45 miles an hour.
Okay.
The thing that triggered it in my mind was that, when we've met with Continental Motors in the past, they said the life expectancy of the existing fuel facility is 2 to 3 years. And so you spend $75,000 for a metal canopy, that seems like a lot of money for something that, 2 to 3 or maybe 5 years. You still, you'd have to replace it at some point. Best practices would be to have a dual wall facility. So.
I think it makes sense, especially if you're gonna get a new fuel farm in 2 to 3 years. It's probably not gonna be in the same location, so why spend that much money on something that we're not.
I mean, we get the money. I mean, it's not like we're gonna not make money on it, but we'll get $45,000 that we'll can do something else with. So, Nick, do you have a comment? How do you feel about it? Has it been has it been good or bad having that? I mean, I think, does the
It's
temp,
better than what was there, for sure.
you mean better than what, just the old metal?
Yeah, than what was there.
Oh, okay, well, I have not heard that.
We'd like to see it.
Okay, well,
So Continental has no objection?
I'm not the person to say I do or not.
I mean, we need to verify that.
who would Steve be the person to verify that with? Okay.
Yes,
All right, well, I will do that tomorrow. I'll get a verification. But I'd like the board's approval pending the verification by Continental to move forward and, buy the tinning facility from either, we've got a couple of proposals, buy the tinning facility and go forward with it. With some point, they are paying for the mediation for the last 3 months. They paid, the insurance company's paid $5,000 a month for the tinning. So that will come to that'll come to an end, if you will. So we'll either own the tinning.
Well, Joe, I pulled this off your desk a minute ago. This is what I gave you a few minutes ago before the meeting. This Soho Event Rentals on Highway 98, right next to our airport. They're saying this particular tent they're offering is rated at 100 miles an hour. So, anyway, just FYI.
Well, that's a new piece of information.
What's their
That's
price?
The rental,
28,000.
well, it's $1,100 a month rental, or it can be $33,000 purchase.
So cheaper rent, more for purchase, but a
Yeah.
higher wind rate.
Yeah, I'll leave this for you.
No, I didn't know that, so that's, okay.
I mean, it's pretty easy to get a cold front even to come through and have winds in excess of 40 miles an hour.
And they're right there, they're right behind, they're right next to Seeger engines.
Now, that's a new piece of information. If it's, that would be a good, I mean, that extra.
That's quite a bit extra, yeah.
Quite a bit.
I would still go to buy it as opposed to renting it. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
When you buy it, you still have something you could use residually once we have a new fuel farm. there might be something
And
else.
everybody told me that, when the tent blew away, the framing's worth as much as the tent,
Yeah.
so.
One last item on the tent. This particular, Josh is his name, and I can't think of his last name, but that's okay. The bottom line is, he says that what we have now is not structurally sound. Now, this is a competing salesperson talking, so FYI. He says that when you look at the gable, there should be a center pole there, but of course, there can't be a center pole there because it needs to be open. His particular tent design is it's engineered to a much higher level. So that's about as much as I can speak to it right now. It's a little bit more expensive, but he is right there in the field, just about right, just on the other side of the west side of the field. And they are also making an opportunity, or they're making themselves available to take it down for hurricanes and special events. A hurricane would be the only thing that would give us that kind of advance warning. So anyway, just it's a nice option.
I think the 100-mile-an-hour wind makes a difference. Because I was worried, Sunday night, we had 45-mile-an-hour winds, and I went out there Monday morning, and it was fine, but it gave me pause. So, yeah, thank you.
So technically, we're required under our lease to obviously insure the covering that was there. I would assume, or we wouldn't have had it insured.
But, Vince, that's a whole nother, I'm not sure we even supposed to insure I don't think we own the field facility, and I'm not sure why we insure it. But we do insure it. Right now, we have insurance, and for $85,000 with a deductible of $5,000.
So, okay, so let's assume that we need to do this then. So if we went with the higher one, got the 100-mile-an-hour rating, we can cut our insurance coverage by more than half. Might be more expensive for a temporary structure than it is for a permanent, but we'd still save some money there. Mm-hmm. And then if this facility is deemed unusable in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then that tent would just be ours. We'd do something, sell it to somebody else, and
We could have we could be a wedding venue.
Yep. I got a place on the river. We'll put it up down there.
It's a big tent.
But it's something we could take and dispose of and sell at that time.
Sure.
Because I would hope that when we get to a new fuel farm, whether it's Continental or ABC, whoever it is, that it's defined who owns it and who insures it.
And it will be double walled and wouldn't need a canopy.
Okay. I make a motion, we negotiate with the higher priced 100-mile-an-hour wind load. Would not hurt to go back and ask the other one.
Yeah.
Can you
yeah.
furnish a 100-mile-an-hour
Yeah.
wind load? Let's find our best price, not to exceed $34,000.
I'll second that, sir.
All those in favor, the motion is to negotiate with both vendors for a higher wind-loaded tent and to move forward expeditiously before the next board. Okay, all those, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, that's good, I appreciate that. Final thing on insurance is North Hanger. North Hanger had some damage. We've had a series of conversations with both the adjuster and the contractor, Steve Cumby Lanier. We're close. There were three types of damages to the North Hanger. There was damage where the wind came, picked up the hangar roof, and water got in the actual insulation. So there's no question for the facility down there, what I call the administrative offices, they'll cover that, and that's not a problem. Now, there's a discussion whether we're going to replace that, place the sheathing, or with new sheeting or old sheeting, but that's being discussed. Well, everybody's in agreement that the insurance will pay for that. The second thing is where the wind lifted, where the wind brought damaged material and actually knocked holes in the sheathing. Again, we've all agreed that that's something that would be covered by our insurance, and we are working through that issue. Again, that will be replaced, and we don't have an issue there. The final one, which is primarily on the hangar itself, there was a lot of what they call wind-driven rain that got into pulled up the sheathing and got into the, or maybe didn't pull up the sheathing, but got into the sheathing by basically some holes that were there already, or some imperfections in the way it was laid. There is a pretty active discussion about, that's 20,000 square feet. There's a pretty active discussion about what the insurance company will pay for, whether they'll pay for anything, or, on that 20,000 feet on the large north hangar as far as the actual hangar itself. So lots of conversations. There's an engineering report out there that supports, that the actual 20,000 feet was actually, 20,000 square foot was actually, wind-driven rain, not actual hurricane, not the wind actually. So I don't have anything to report on that other than we're still discussing that, and we're getting close, but we're not there yet.
When you say sheeting, you were talking strictly roof sheeting, though?
Roof sheeting, yes, sir.
No walls?
Both on the administrative, the remediation initially, the order they got in the administration building, they replaced all that without any question. Took the walls down, took the first floor and put new insulation, and cut it down and dried it out, whatever. What we're discussing is both on the administrative building, and really not as much on the administrative building. Everybody's in agreement there that wind got up under there and lifted that sheathing up. What there is discussion about is on the north hangar itself, whether that was wind, whether the insulation's wet, whether the insulation got wet because of wind-driven rain or because of the sheathing was pulled up by the wind. So.
Do we not have coverage for wind-driven rain?
No.
Are we sure?
We don't. Wind-driven, there's three, according to the engineering study, wind-driven rain is not covered under our policy.
We need to look real hard into that.
We've got insurance people who have volunteered to take that on for us. We can fight that battle if we need to, but what I was trying to do is get close on everything else and leave that kind of out there, and then we'll come back and say, what's your pleasure? Do we want to fight this, this 20,000 square feet of wet north hanger, do we want to fight that and get that, you know?
If the roof is actually pulled up and back down due to negative pressure, then that's obvious because the screws are going to be ripped out.
Yep.
It'd be easy to find. Otherwise, it's wind-driven rain from negative pressure is going to hit because we have a sloped roof and a flat roof.
Yeah.
And that's just part of life in a hurricane with insurance. So we really need to not roll over on that.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and we're still, I mean, but they spent money getting an engineering study, we've got the engineering study, I'll share it with you, we'll, you know, we haven't done anything yet, we're still just discussing. I don't think there's agreement on principle on the administrative building, I think we're all okay to get that fixed, and then we'll replace all the insulation there, but the north hanger itself.
Are they thinking that water did not come from wind-driven rain?
They think that the wind pulled the sheathing up, and then the rain got in it.
Because we
Or,
have a damaged roof.
yeah, the roof was damaged.
Okay.
Or the roof was damaged by flying debris that got water in it.
Okay, which is hurricane,
The
wind and
hurricane,
hail
yeah,
coverage.
yeah. But they don't think that on the actual north hanger, that the wind-driven rain, that the policy doesn't actually address wind-given rain.
Joe, I'm going to address this to Mr. Turpak. Is this something you think you can help us with?
I'll be glad to look at
To be an advocate for us potentially and yeah.
Well,
Do
there's-
you- A question, do you have something in writing that stipulates there is no coverage for wind-driven rain?
I have an engineering study from a company in Atlanta that Ingle Martin commissioned, and I was told by the insurance adjuster that our policy did not cover wind-driven rain. I have not
Is it
got-
excluded, is it one of the exclusions in the policy, I think
It's
he's asking?
exclusion in the policy. And I'll send you the policy and you
I
can.
got the policy.
Okay.
Okay.
But I was actually told by a couple of attorneys that they win that argument all the time. The wind-driven rain.
Can I offer a comment?
Sure.
Many times, when it comes to rising water, there are issues of, was it rising water, which in this case it isn't, or was it wind-driven water?
Okay.
Okay? And it's flood versus a wind policy. People make mistakes in their interpretation. If there's not an exclusion in the policy that says wind-driven rain is not covered, my experience is I've not heard of such a thing. Wind-driven rain that causes water to rise, now my hangar had water. But it didn't come from the top down, it came from the bottom up, that's a flood. So I'll be glad to look into the
Yeah, I mean, I would welcome, again, I haven't dug into the policy and, you know, I mean, this is about 4 hours of conversations that the adjuster and that I've been party to, that the adjuster keeps referring to this pretty adamantly, and we've agreed to disagree.
Give me 48 hours and I'll look into it,
Okay.
because where I come from, talk is cheap.
I'll send you the engineering report and the, Ingo Smart, you know, I'll send you that and we can,
Okay.
okay?
Biggest drugs, not even a fortune on that interpretation.
And if we have that exclusion in our policy, we have a very bad policy.
Yeah.
Go from there.
Okay, well, that's kind of where we are.
But everything else has been agreed upon on the north hanger,
Yes, sir,
other than that area.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there was some disagreement. Lanier Construction wanted to replace all the sheathing with new materials.
I agree, because it doesn't match.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not gonna do all of it, they're gonna do some of it. I mean, where it wasn't damaged, they're gonna just rebuild the sheathing, the re-sheathing down. But that's the only other issue that we're fighting.
Have there been any leaks since?
It leaks now.
But it's always leaked. Hadn't it?
Yeah, but not like it does now.
Okay, well, we need to get it fixed. We need to get the administrative building fixed.
So that's just a leak, not a wind-driven rain
Yeah.
leak that we got now.
I mean, in the hangar part, it significantly leaks everything.
Okay.
The office area, there's a couple minor ones that we knew would happen
Yeah.
until it gets a permanent fix, but we get the hang of it, weeks.
But what I've heard complaints about is the administrative building. Maybe that's, yeah,
You missed part of them, I guess, but
Okay.
it's leaking.
yeah, it needs to be fixed. Vince, would you have to, I mean, the installation that got wet, does it have to, it has to be removed, is that right?
Got to be an opportunity to dry out, because then you get a mold and mildew issue. So
Okay.
my opinion as an owner, we need to demand it be removed,
Okay.
so it doesn't get into a mold and mildew issue, which I'm sure is excluded from our policy. So we just demand it be
So the
removed,
20,000 square feet that's gotten wet,
comes out,
gotta be out. That's okay.
in my opinion, because it goes straight to mold and mildew, and I guarantee you that's excluded from our policy. So we should not accept that.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Well, Garen, I'll get you the stuff and we'll go forward. I need an ally. I'm kind of, feel like I'm a little like the Indians. I'm getting massacred a little bit there. Okay. Continental Aeros, no, Josh, do you want to talk about the negotiations with Diamond Air?
There's no update on that. No further negotiations have taken place, so it would be up to the board, obviously, but I would suggest that P11, or if the board recalls, that P11 is actually 2 hangar pads that we combined into one. I would suggest that if somebody comes along and is interested, that either P11 or P11/P12 is open and available to be leased.
Was there an expiration date on that agreement, or is it just?
No, the board had previously adopted a policy that had given 30 days from the delivery of the lease to have a signed lease with deposits paid. That has long since come and gone. And I've heard nothing further on behalf of Diamond Air, so I don't have any update. And again, based on the board's previous policy, I would suggest that either that combined P11 or P11 and P12, depending on what a prospective tenant would want to do, would be open and subject to being leased.
We charge them a time and effort. I mean, I've spent hours talking to engineers and getting it resurveyed, and you've spent hours on a contract. Any chance of us sending them a bill for, services, just, whether?
No, at least we don't have any avenue by contract or anything like that to get reimbursed for those fees. I mean, and I agree with you. There have been multiple surveys for that pad.
Multiple surveys, multiple.
Trying to accommodate that,
engineers.
but we don't have any mechanism to recoup those expenses.
I will suggest that they come back to the table, that they're going to be liable for those expenses up front before we go any further.
Well, now that is a possibility. If there are further negotiations, it could be subject to reimbursement of those expenses. But just unfortunately, as of right now, if they just walk away like they seem to have done,
Right.
then we don't have that opportunity.
Do we have any dialogue with them at all?
I've had none
Zero.
since prior to the last board meeting.
This is frustrating. All right.
One more question while we got the attorney on the line. Has the Hanson Group signed the amendment to their lease?
Yes, well, I don't have a copy of it, but Mr. Hanson was out of state having some surgery, and
Yeah, hip surgery.
I did communicate with him, and I mailed him a copy of the lease extension to be signed. He communicated with me, I think by text message, he received it, he was going to forward it back to his group to have the witness signature, and then deliver that to the authority to be signed on our part. So it
That's
is.
the surcharge amendment.
The surcharge amendment and the amendment to the leased
Make it smaller.
area to make it smaller, both of them, correct. So that is in the works. There has been some communication on that front, although I don't have the actual document in hand yet, but they have been in communication with me.
Nick, you want a Continental's report? I don't have anything on there other than lessons learned. Do you have a report? Anything you want to talk about?
Damien had a good, he brought up a good tour the other day. Been very, very busy at the airport this month. This week we've already sold over 3,000 gallons of jet fuel, so we're on Tuesday. Traffic's been very busy. Jordan's ramp is finished. There's a lot of good progress. Things going good. No real complaints.
Anything we can do to help?
What else insurance stuff said, and finish the roof.
And we appreciate you helping us out with the public safety anchor folks. Hank, you want to do an engineer's report?
Yeah, I know everybody's kind of interested in this PCN evaluation. We did work, everybody knows that we had kind of a glitch in what they had originally submitted due to what I'd like to call as outlier aircraft that were largely overweight for the airport. We then talked to the firm that was responsible for doing the PCN study, told them that those aircraft were not supposed to be on the runway. They had essentially snuck in, if you will, under the radar, whatever the case may be, but it isn't an aircraft that frequently operates at the airport. So we got that removed, had them rerun the analysis, and the analysis came back exactly what we figured it would. And the PCNs for the runway and the taxiway are 13 and 14 respectively. So the 13, a PCN of 13 equates to a 35,000 gross weight, 35,000 pound gross weight single wheel gear, and a 50,000 dual wheel configuration, 50,000 gross aircraft weight. And then if you have a dual tandem gear configuration, you can go up to 100,000 pounds. But I don't know of any aircraft, I hadn't seen anything with a dual tandem show up on.
With the exception of the new ramp, that's for existing taxiways and runway?
That's for the runway, is the 13. 14, the taxiway is actually capable of supporting a 14 PCM, which is 37 and 55, so slightly, about 2,000 to 3,000 pounds more in that same configuration. So, well, and the thing is, that used to be the old runway.
That taxiway used to be the runway.
So, one of the key things that determines the PCN is the ability of the subgrade, the soil beneath the pavement, to support those loads. And based on the material that runway is constructed on now, is what we refer to as an A4 or A6 material, which is not really a good conducive material to build a pavement structure on. So during its original construction, that material that was used to build that embankment, whether that was cut down, somewhat mixed, blended, all the borings showed material that is kind of substandard to what you would see. Even on a roadway job, they don't classify A4 and A6s. In most cases, they tell them that it has to be improved or removed before you go to a pavement section on it. So looking into the future, where you talk about strengthening the runway, it just means you add pavement on top of it, which then increases the distance between the top of the surface and the top of the subgrade, allowing energy to get dissipated out through the pavement in a flexible format like asphalt. So it's not the end of the world, but I would venture to say that PCM would probably be 2 to 3 points higher if it had a good subgrade that it was sitting on. So that's the long and short of it, but essentially what you have on your 5010 is what it found. It actually found about 1,000 pounds less than what's listed on the 5010, but then keep in mind that this PCN is determined by the actual methods in place when they tested the runway, the falling weight deflectometer. So in the original design of the runway, it probably met the 36,000, 58,000 single wheel and dual wheel configuration that's listed on the 5010, but that pavement's been out there for over 10 or 12 years. So it has degraded some and it's fatigued some, so the falling weight deflectometer basically finding that. So it's lowering your PCN over time.
So it's 36,000 pounds for a single wheel?
It's what it'll be right now is 35 for a single wheel and 50 for a dual wheel.
And we were, 58?
You were 36 and 58.
58, so we're down 8,000
Mhm.
pounds.
But you can still leave, I don't recommend changing the 5010 just because of this analysis at this point. This analysis is going to be used for the future project. In other words, this shows the FAA what they're gonna need to know when you get ready to move forward and go for that runway strengthening.
So we're good on our airport facilities, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't go changing the 50-10. I mean, you don't have enough operations from aircraft that are greater than, 40,000 pounds on a dual wheel configuration. Therefore, this number is a safe number is what it is. It's got like a safety factor in it. You know what I mean? So, if you had operations that were 10,000 operations a year with a 50,000 pound dual wheel aircraft, then I would say, yeah, you need to stay with these numbers here and repost the 50-10. But in this case, your operations just don't support that. And then as far as the 2 construction jobs, Jordan, jump in here. I know the southwest apron, everything looks good on it. I don't know if you guys have been out there to look at it, but it's nice and pretty and black, got new paint on it. And then I think the guys actually did a pretty good job on it based on what I saw today when I went by there.
Looks nice.
Yeah, it did. It definitely helped it out tremendously.
There's a big old pile of sand. Is that theirs that they left behind?
Yeah, that's theirs. I mean,
You need some?
No, but when the wind blows, it's blowing all over the taxiway.
Yeah, we
So
probably need to get that
we'll have
out.
a weed blower to blow it off.
Yeah.
We've kind of same situation we had before. We had a lot of wind.
Blows it out onto the ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get with them or,
Well, we left it because Nick asked.
oh, ask to keep it? Okay,
Yeah, we did
okay.
keep
We filled up
cover
the
of-
sinkhole.
Well, if nothing else, if
They
you
weren't
just.
sinkholes, they were old, they were where the
There are holes in the ground that.
the fuel facility
Okay,
was,
yeah.
it started sinking.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was that picture I showed you, like where they.
right, that sinkhole that was over there. Okay, yeah, so, yeah, I mean, if you need to, as far as reducing size, if you put a tarp over it or something, just anything to protect you from the wind, that'd be fine, anchored with some bricks or something. And then,
We know where you can buy a tarp for $33,000.
We do, we can help that out.
We can get through.
it's quite impressive, a tent at 100-mile-an-hour wind rating. Yeah, the other project, one that Cunningham Delaney did, I know they came in there and rocked the house on that, had good weather, built it up, got it paved real quick. I think they're just waiting on making sure the grass is
Yeah, I rode by
stable.
today on my way down to Florida, and it looks like it's starting to come up, so we'll probably have with holidays being next week, we might wait till the week after Christmas to have a final walkthrough, but it'll be soon.
So, I think, as far as that goes, everything else looks pretty good. Master plan's coming along really good. We've got all the obstructions located on it, pretty much mapped out, so,
Probably ready to have a review on that in January.
yeah, I would say in the next 3 to 4 weeks, have a draft submitted for you guys to look at. The master plan that you'll see this time versus what was done on the original is gonna be a lot more easy to look at, and because of the more details, and those more details mean you have to split it up multiple pages, and a lot more colors, and it's a better package than what was given back in 2012, so I think you guys will like that. But that's about it. If you guys got any questions, I can answer them. You welcome.
He said colors, I was tapping the chair.
It's late.
Treasurer's report, Amy's got some sickness in the family, so briefly, I mean, there's, the only real thing that jumped out at me as far as we had about $6,500 of ground maintenance, which was, our usual cut is $3,500 per cut, but we sprayed all the runway lights and the fence lines with Roundup, so that was probably, that's probably our last cut of the year. Fuel facility, the fueling costs were a little bit off. The fueling was still off a little bit. Everything else is kind of where it is after 2 months. Any questions by the financials? And then as far as the audit, which I'm working on, as far as Warren Avertt's doing our audit again, we have to get a single source audit again, not so much because of our project, but because we had to roll into everything else the city won as far as federal audit. So we still have to do the same amount of work, and we're well on our way to getting that done. No issues, we just a lot of stuff to document. So anyway, we should be through with that before the first week in January. So, okay, any questions? Development of the West Side Commercial Area. We're going to go into executive session, talk a little bit about that. I don't have any real report. We've had a developer ask about maybe doing that. He's got some plans, some ideas, nothing that he's bringing a contract to us to discuss, but we'll talk about that a little bit in executive session. And finally, Chip, you want to talk a little bit about Dr. Egerton's retirement?
Yeah, Dr. Egerton is retiring in December. The Frank Farmer's going to take his place. And Joe and I did kind of back and forth, kind of put together a letter to send to him, thanking him for all the contributions he's made to our airport through the years. And he's a good guy.
He is a good guy.
I thought, should we consider maybe something like a gift, something with Fairhope flair or something to send with the letter to him?
Yeah. And I'd like your help on the letter. Chip and I are not, we're not as, our letter's good, but it could be, it could be fine too.
We got it going.
We got it going,
So
that's right.
Yeah, the basic structure's there.
Thank you for your service. So, I'm for a gift. I don't think we can do that with authority money, but we can contribute our, we can individually make a contribution and buy something. Does that make sense?
Yep. Good
So,
idea.
we'll look into that. Okay. Does he have a retirement party or anything like that? Or?
Not that I'm sure there's something up there, but nothing that I know of, I've heard of so far.
I haven't heard of anything either. Hank, have you heard anything?
We got the letter and then, the notice that he was,
I think they're mostly still working from home.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's interesting. That'd be hard to do. Okay. Well, I'll solicit everybody for a little something, and we'll have a committee of one with Chip to pick out an appropriate going away present.
I'm going to ask Vince's wife to pick something out of the store.
Something
I like his idea even better.
Now, he did tell me he was going to spend a lot of time in the West, and so maybe.
Let's go out fishing every now and then.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe something like that, maybe a Orvis, something from an Orvis collector or something like that. So anyway, all right. Will, you want to talk a little bit about the website?
Yeah. The only thing we lack at this point is some aerial photography of the airport. Ben Montgomery and I have been trying to get that done. Me out of my airplane and Ben with his drone. But between mechanical issues and weather and other things, we haven't done it yet. And we would also appreciate any content that you guys could give us to go on the new website. Take a look at the old website, include our advisory committee on that too. If you would, take a look at the current site and give us your ideas on any new or tweaked content we need on that. But that website is going to be job number one from here. We need to get it done.
Yeah. A good way to start the new year. Any business from the audience?
I have some other business.
Yes,
I'd like
sir.
to talk about. Back when the redesigned layout, we were talking about when we eliminated hangar P12, and we made it P11, and it's one gigantic hangar. When we did that, we took our fuel farm, which was sitting at the end of the east end of the east ramp on the north end, and we flip-flopped it and moved it down to the south end. So now it sits on the southeast corner.
Yep.
Down here. It was over here. So then we put P18 in here, and it's listed as, and of course these were all generics, as a 4-unit box hangar, 260 by 62. I've discussed this with Josh, and I'm going to recommend this, and then we discussed sending and getting an unofficial ethics opinion on this. But I would like to lease spot P18 and build a 5-unit box hangar that's 240 by 41. A little bit narrower, a little bit shorter, but 5 units instead of the 4 bigger units that are here. So I'd like to propose that. I'm not asking anybody to vote on it, but I'm just telling you that I'm planning on presenting to the airport authority the opportunity to lease that space to build a 5-unit corporate box hangar in that area. And then any discussions after that, I will excuse myself.
So we have to
somewhere.
relocate the fuel facility a little bit, or just
No.
not at all?
No, this is the relocated that
Okay.
we approved back then. This is actually just taking hangar P-18, but determining the actual size that goes right there, which is that one at the bottom that's parallel to Highway 13, parallel to the new road we just put in.
So do we need to get P-18 surveyed, or is this all?
Well, I
You're
need
early.
to get with Josh, and I need to sign an agreement of what I'm intending to do, and then he needs to present it to the airport authority, and I need to leave, and
Right.
it needs to be voted on. And then subject to an ethics letter at a minimum.
Yeah,
from
I
the
appreciate
ethics
you doing
commission.
that. That's a great way to go. Okay? So we'll try to do that in January, is that right?
Nothing we want to do today, but I want to tell you all that I'm going to start negotiating with Josh as not as an airport authority member, as an individual who wants to build a hangar.
Okay.
And then what we're coming up with is language that is acceptable to Vince and also acceptable to the authority for a letter request that we will submit to the Ethics Commission, so that the Ethics Commission, they take what is submitted to them and issue an opinion. So necessarily anything that they don't get, their limitation is, our opinion is based on what you give to us and not any independent investigation that we do. So for that reason, we want to make sure the Ethics Commission has more and not less, if that makes sense. We just want to give them everything from both sides that we think we will need, so that the opinion, when it's issued, is based on an accurate set of assumptions.
These are also larger hangars, which would leave them out of competition with the airport authority, who's already oversubscribed on some smaller T hangars.
It's a great opportunity.
Joe, I've got I'd like to propose a motion that Garrett Turpak would be named as our agent of record, because I've heard quite a bit tonight about this windstorm versus rain. It's the classic insurance company runaround. And I really would like to entertain the thought of naming Garrett the agent now, so he can get a head start on this project now and the potential renewal of the renewal itself coming up in March. That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll say.
Okay. I've got some loyalty to Robbie. I think he's done a great job for us over the years, so I'm going to be opposed, so we'll just up and down vote, but, I mean, I think Garrett would do a great job. Yeah, I mean, so let's go ahead and vote. I mean, so all those in favor of Garrett being named the engineer of record, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So, 4 to 1, and I'm opposed, so, all right, so we'll do a letter, forget, so what if, okay, well, I guess that's where we are, okay. And I guess we probably need to tell Robbie that too, don't we?
I'll provide you, I can send it, I've got Don's email, I've got Chip's email, Vince's. I can send a copy of the standard agent of record change.
Okay.
And I'll get it to them, you guys look at it, it'll be your lead.
But I'm gonna put you to work negotiating this last part of that then, okay? Because I've spent hours doing it.
Which is a big part of my reasoning for
Okay,
making the
that's
motion.
fine, I mean, but we've spent hours doing it with really no backup, and I'm not sure that all insurance policies or that wind-driven rain is an issue, but we'll certainly learn as we go, okay? Good, look forward to working with you. All right, we want to go into executive sessions briefly. We've got 3 or 4 items to discuss. Josh, can you get us in an executive session?
This is not, so the agenda item is an executive session to discuss consideration for the lease of real property. That's not something that requires an attorney certification, but there does need to be a motion to go into executive session with a roll call vote.
Okay.
So move.
All right, all those in favor of going into executive session, signify so.
You gotta do roll call.
Roll call, okay. Vince?
Yes.
Chip?
Yes.
Yes. Joe, okay, we're going to executive session, we'll probably adjourn from executive session. No, we'll come back in here, adjourn, is that right? Yeah.
Yes,
You'll come back in
that's
and
right.
adjourn, but we'll, yeah,
About how long are we gonna be?
probably 15 minutes.
And we're not anticipating taking any
I don't think there'll
action.
be any action.
See you guys later.
Thank y'all, thank y'all.
Thanks, Hank.
I'll call the airport authority meeting back in session after the executive session. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank y'all, have a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas.
I sent you,